Hi, so I'm Ka-Ming and I'm the academic engagement librarian. This term can mean different things in different institutions, but in my role, it's basically like a subject librarian. I do teaching, I do collection development. I'm involved in sort of curating some of the online guidance we give to students. Aside from that role, I also have a remit to look at how libraries serve researchers as well, which is like a growing area in the UK, looking at scholarly communications, looking at open access and the broader term open research. So that's kind of like what I'm involved in. And so today, what I am going to share are some of the tools I use in my day-to-day life for work purposes. For my role. Let me just see. Can I get to move? Okay, so what I will cover are some of the tools that I use. I'll talk a little bit about the features that I like and or maybe some of the examples of how I use these tools. Right, so the first one that I am going to mention is Panopto. So Panopto is a lecture recording tool. Originally it was brought in so that whenever academics deliver their lectures, it can be recorded and then uploaded into the LMS, or we call it the VLE, the virtual learning environment, which is then kept and then shared with students and enables them to watch it again at whatever time they would like. One of the reasons why I don't make any of the choices in these tools. This is an institutional subscription. So someone, I'm assuming in IT or in learning tech, decided on this tool. And I think they probably decided it because it is highly compatible with our VLE. The useful functions of the Panopto tool is that it can generate captions. It has gotten better over time. I remember when I first used it a few years ago, and because it is an American tool, it was better at picking up my colleagues who were from America and had an American accent. It wasn't so good at picking up the British accent. So I had a lot of fun editing the captions or not. But I do feel like over time their captioning has gotten better. Another thing that is useful about Panopto is that it's embeddable. You can embed it to view it directly in the VLE, or depending on the setup of your VLE. And also you can embed it into a web page so that students can click on it and then view it within that browser. There are also different levels of openness in terms of who can access it. So for example, there are some content that we're happy for everyone to view, whether it's someone in our university or someone from outside of our university, so that we can make that shareable and open and anyone can view it and see it. But there may be some content, and I know some lecturers think about their own intellectual property or things they don't want to share widely, and that they can kind of almost kind of put the lock on it and kind of like protect it so that only someone with an institution login can go in and view those materials. So it might just be things that might be a bit like sensitive or specifically about the institution that you might not want to share publicly. Another thing is that if you make it so that students have to log in to watch it, it's very good at tracking usage. So you can see who looked at it, when, and how much of the video they viewed, if you really want to go into the analytics of it. One of the things I like using for Panopto whenever I'm recording sessions for the lecturers, whenever I do a library session, an embedded session, normally they ask for a recording as well, or ask if I can record it. One of the things I like is that there is a contents page that you can create. So you can kind of jump to a specific point in the video, add a timestamp and add a kind of a little direct link to it. So let's see. So this is an example of a Panopto video and part of what it looks like. This is for some online reading list training that we ran. And then it's a full kind of session, which was aimed at academics about how to manage your reading list. And what I did was created a contents page on the side, so that if an academic later wanted to look at it, they don't have to watch the whole thing. They could jump specifically to how do I add a YouTube video, or how do I add books from the library or books not from the library, so they can jump exactly to that point. So that's one of the reasons why I like Panopto. But as mentioned before, this is an institutional subscription, and I don't think it is something that you can get for free. So that's the first tool that I use quite a lot. Okay. And sometimes I use it for lectures, but sometimes I might just use Panopto to record short videos about doing specific things or using databases, which I then send to the lecturer or put up on our website. Okay, so the next one that I use a lot is PowerPoint. Microsoft Office has deep penetration into all academic institutions. Everywhere I've worked uses Microsoft Office, but obviously that speaks to the money or the finances of the universities and what they have. So the reasons why I use PowerPoint is, well, it's just one that everyone uses. But at the same time, PowerPoint has changed a lot over the decades. I used it back when I was a student. I'm still using it now. But there are some useful functions that they have really integrated into the software, which I really like. Firstly, is the smart design. So the presentation that I'm giving to you today, like if you look at the decoration in the background, that was all generated by Microsoft. I just picked one that I liked the look of, and then I went with it. The next thing that I use a lot is the accessibility checker. Within the UK, there is a mandate that any public-facing web pages has to have meet some sort of like accessibility requirement. And within our university, that meant all our external web pages had to have gone through some sort of accessibility check or have some sort of statement on their accessibility. And this in turn kind of extended to anything that we output, including PowerPoint presentations and videos, etc. So the nice thing about PowerPoint is that it has a really great accessibility checker, meaning once you've created a slide, it goes through it. It kind of tells you whether the contrast isn't too good, it wouldn't be viewable, whether the reading order, if someone was using a screen reader, would be in the correct order or not, whether your each slide has a title, etc., etc. So you can kind of use that checker to double check and make sure your PowerPoint, your slides are accessible before uploading it into the public sphere or into the VRE. Another thing is that you can actually enable live captions. So if you were using PowerPoint for a presentation, you can turn on the captions so that captions appear at the bottom. And I use that sometimes as well when we were delivering content. And furthermore, it's part of the Office 365 suite, meaning that if you are using Word and the other things, you are using Teams, there are fewer compatibility issues. Okay, I just wanted to quickly show you, here is an example of the accessibility checker. You go in via review, check accessibility, and then this little screen pops up with all these little notes saying, check your reading order. The color doesn't look too right. And then you can go through that and work through it until you kind of like check off all the things that need looking at. Okay, so that's tool number 2. Okay, tool number 3 is another part of the Office 365 suite. It's OneNote. Now, this one is useful for several different things. It can be a collaborative document, so you can be using it to keep track of meeting agendas, minutes. I could see kind of students maybe using it to collaborate on creating something. This is a tool I mainly recommend to doctoral researchers because it's a good way of kind of keeping track of like research. It's searchable across notebooks, sections and pages. It has an app. So if you're researching, you're going out, you can be capturing things using your browser or phone and then inputting it into OneNote. So it's kind of like cloud-based, but also there's like a desktop application. So it stores it in the cloud, and then when you get back home, you sync it so that it stores it into your desktop application. Another thing that I quite like about OneNote, and actually this dictation tool is also available in Word, in PowerPoint, is that there's a really nice function that if you have a mic plugged in, you can use the dictation tool, and then you can do speech to text. So rather than slowly typing everything out, you could speak into OneNote, and OneNote will capture what you're saying and kind of like turn it into text for you. I have to say that one of the disadvantages I found with it was that there was a lot of like issues with exporting content, and potentially some compatibility between sort of the mobile version, the desktop version, and the browser version sometimes have slightly different functionality. So it can take a bit of time to figure out what you can do in which one. And those are some things I try to highlight with students. When I recommend things, I also try to point out, well, here are the things that might not work that well. And that's something to bear in mind when you choose it as a tool to use, because it's one option of many that doctoral researchers could be using to keep track of their research. Okay, so I just thought I'd give some example of how I'm using it. So the bigger picture is showing how I'm using it to keep track of information for the law department, what the teaching schedule is, who are my contacts, what databases are we teaching for that subject area, because I was sharing this subject with another colleague. And we were doing it, taking over from a colleague that left. So this was a nice way for us both to kind of keep track of all the most useful information that we needed to keep on track of this, on top of this subject area. And then on the right-hand side is just a list of the dictation languages that is available. So I actually found it quite interesting that when they set the dictation language, as we can see, for English, they actually listed English Australia, English Canada, English India. So they've actually put a bit of thought into recognizing different accents. And so when I show this to students, and we have international students, I'm like, you can always, if your language is there, type it, well, do use speech to text, but in your own language. So that's a nice function of it that I like. Okay, number 4 is Padlet. Now, this is a free tool that anyone can use, but it's one of those where they have what is called freemium, as in the basics of it is free, but if you want to do more, if you want extra functionality, that's when you have to pay more to get all the extra functionality. So I've used it before just on the free version, but at University of Westminster, they have paid for an institutional subscription as well, because a lot of people use it, and it is quite useful. So it's an online collaboration tool where it's almost like a whiteboard, blackboard, and then you can invite everyone, as long as they have a link, to go in and post things. What I quite like about Padlet is that there's a variety of layouts that you can use. You can kind of set it so that all the comments are in columns. You can set it so that it's free fall. So you can take a look at other different varieties and think about how you want to use it with students, with someone else, and pick the one that works for you. If you have internet connection, it's very easy to add and contribute links. So it works best if all the students either have access to a computer or a mobile device if you're using it in a teaching session. Another thing is that you can set levels of privacy. So again, you can make it fully open, or you can make it so that only the people you send the link to can access it, or completely closed. And I think that's for if you have an institutional subscription to it. So here is an example of a Padlet that I use. There was talk about open access earlier, and I know that's part of something that is the COL's ethos. So one of the things I teach is about open access resources that students can use. And so I set up a Padlet, and I have all these different columns. And so for each column, I talk about the different type of open access content that they can use, and I just give it to the students and I talk about it, and I kind of like ask them to go ahead and explore it as well. So that's one of the ways I use it in teaching. Another thing that I sometimes use with students is, say, if it's a literature search session and students are asked to do their own research, but they're all researching the same topic, I might run a session where I get them to explore databases and then post the links of the relevant research articles that they found onto Padlet, and then we go through and discuss it, and the academic can chip in and go whether that's a good resource or not. So it can be quite nice for research sharing and for students as well. And I've just posted on the right hand side basically the window that talks about all the things that you can do to modify it. So for example, you can make it so that the moderator has to approve a message before it appears publicly. There's a filter profanity. You can make it so that students can comment on the post, display author name. So there are a few things that you can do to each Padlet, which I think is quite nice. And depending on the context, you might want to put some of these things in. Okay. And then the last tool that I use is Mentimeter. And so Mentimeter is it's called an interactive presentation tool. What you can do with it is create word clouds. You can create quizzes. You can use it to ask the audience some questions. It's really nice for bringing interactivity to a presentation. It's pretty simple to use and set up. And it's useful for checking in with an audience or bringing up discussion points. A nice thing I like about it is that once you've run a session, it would have generated some slides, and then you can download the results and you can keep them. So say if you've had a whole discussion about what is the best tool and everyone's inputted everything, after the session in the Mentimeter, you can kind of download that and keep a copy of that, reuse, or use that to kind of like write up your notes. It is, again, another freemium thing. You can use it for free, but then it limits the number of questions and quiz slides that you can use per Mentimeter. And then if you pay more, you can kind of put up as many slides as you want, I think. I've only used the free version, mainly because I don't use it to run a whole presentation. I use it to insert some quizzes and some questions and some discussion points. So here are some examples of how we use it. So for example, in a session where which we are running with doctoral researchers, sometimes we put at the start, well, what do you want to get out of this session? So we use this to capture what all the students say they want to learn from the session. And it's very nice because that means as the session progresses, we can kind of refer back to this and go, yes, we can answer this question now. This is outside. We'll look at it later. And also, again, because we've captured it, we can go back to it. Often what I'll do is then anything we don't answer, I would include in an email when I send the slides over to students. And also we can use that to inform the next time we run the session. If it was like, lots of students was interested in X, maybe we should include a slide or a bit about X if we haven't done so already. So that's one of the nice things about that. And this is another example of how we use it is I ran a session on with my colleagues on what it means to be an open researcher. So we did a check-in at the start, going to the everyone who joined. What does it mean to be an open researcher? We ran our session and then we asked the same question again and gave everyone an opportunity to put up to 3 words that they now thought of when they come across the word open researcher. So I think it's a really nice way to potentially bookend or see whether your presentation has perhaps made a difference in how someone feels about something. So I thought that was quite a nice use of Mentimeter. Okay, so I've kind of stormed through everything. So those are my 5 tools. And obviously from talking about it, you're already aware that a lot of the tools I am using are things that are already provided for me by the university. So I don't really have to think too much about which tool I am using, because my university is able to provide it for me. But there are some tools outside of the university that I do use and was using before they were adopted as institutional tools. And there are a lot of great tools out there that are free. But I think one of the things that you can see from all of this, it does require good solid internet access, and for some of the tools it requires the students each to have a device that they can use to interact with the tool. Okay, so yes, that's the end of my presentation. I hope that was useful for everyone.
And Ms. Ka-Ming, I definitely have picked up some pointers there in your presentation. All right, so I'm going to look into, my presentation is basically focusing on how we do things at NAMCOL, and using that framework that Jason referred to earlier on. Currently, I am the manager for e-learning at NAMCOL, and I looked at it. I was asking myself, how should I approach this? And I thought, let's look at the use of education tools within our within my office, and that is more from a material development point of side, but also a little bit into how, after we have developed it, taking it out to our learners. Now, as NAMCOL is a distance education institution, we do not really have a lot of face-to-face with our learners. But in short, not to take long, we use EdTech tools for the design and development of our learning materials. We do it, that is content development. Then we do it for our online meetings, whether it's for administration or even live meetings to present live classes to our learners. Then it's also for communication, and it's more on using social media tools for communication. And then also the tools that we use for assessment. So that is where my focus will be on. Now, as an institution, NAMCOL has already the licensed software or paid subscription to our those office tools and suites. And one of the common factors that one need to consider is budget. So what we do is, of what I'm trying, because I'm also the one responsible for training others on how to develop online content and using tools. We would like to use what we have already that the institution need, but what we can also use for in our content development. So if I'm thinking in terms of the Microsoft Office package, we are making use of Microsoft Word, the PowerPoint for presentation, Excel for our spreadsheets, and maybe if you think, maybe if I go on and we have to create some files to upload our learners once off CSV files onto the LMS, that type of tool way we're using it, besides not teaching learners how to do a spreadsheet. I will talk a little bit more when I get to how we use about how we use Word and PowerPoint. Because we have subscription to Google for Education, we mostly use it for the Google Drive for sharing our files, OneDrive too, but not such a big extent, more at institutional level than where it is with tutors and learners. And then we have Outlook for emails and Gmail. Now the Gmail from institutional point of view, it's more for students. It's primarily for our students, and then it's secondarily for staff if we have problems with our emails, Outlook email. But that is in short my comments on the use or reference to the office tools and suites that we are using. Jason, if I'm too fast, you must tell me. Or colleagues. When it comes to content development, we actually—
You're okay for time. You're okay for time. Sorry. So okay. if you finish it before, we can have more time for questions.
Okay. For content development, we make use of both open source free tools and even licensed tools or softwares. So where is my EdTech tool focus on? We are developing both print-based material for our print-based study material for learners, as well as for online. So in content development, we make use of tools for image of graphic creations. So using Windows tools or Microsoft Word, for example, to take screenshots, we do use what we find built into our laptop, into our computers, like a snipping tool and the print screen tool. And these are usually used in together with maybe a Microsoft Word. If I create a diagram or something on Microsoft Word, I can use my snipping tool to make it an image, because I cannot all the time on an LMS create size nice diagrams. And then I can create an image, a clear image that you can upload, or you can use your print screen tool on your keyboard. Another one, because of ease of use and user friendliness, another tech tool that I use for image creation a lot for many years now is called Photo Filter. Photo Filter is an image. You can create your own image, but you can also edit your images, existing images that you find on the web, giving it its OER, that it is Creative Commons license. And some of my colleagues also make use of the Paint tool. So that is for image, for graphics. At NAMCOL, we have our own studio where we do radio or audio recordings and video recordings, but we also make use of, usually our developers is people that are not permanently appointed at NAMCOL. We appoint part-time staff, and they don't have all access to all this, to the studios, for example, and the softwares. So for audio clip creation, we use the Audacity tool. Audacity, there are other audio recording tools, but I use Audacity and also Photo Filter. It's downloadable tools that you can download on your computer and you use it. You do not need access to internet. And also the fact that you can edit whatever you've created using these two tools. When it comes to screen recordings, we use Screencast-O-Matic and to some extent Screencastify, but I tend to focus on Screencast-O-Matic, although it's also licensed. You have a free version because you can do editing of your recordings. So you don't have to redo and redo when you've made a mistake. You can stop yourself, start over, and you can edit your clips before you share it with the users. Yes, we have also started off testing using DaVinci Resolve, which is also a downloadable video editor. Our teachers or our content developers is still finding it a bit challenging, but we are going through to create, when they've created their own videos, maybe using their mobile devices, they can upload it on the DaVinci and do some editing and create that video clips. So that is what we do. With regard to interactive content, we use H5P, which is licensed if it's not embedded on our LMS. We also use Google Forms, especially for surveys. And further on, we use the embedded tools that we find on our LMSs to create interactive content. That is with regard. At NAMCOL, we use two learning platforms. For secondary education, we use NotesMaster. And for our TVET and tertiary programs, we use the Moodle platform. We use NotesMaster, and for secondary education, everything we do on NotesMaster is being published or developed and shared as open educational resources. It's open. You don't know, users don't pay for it. You just need to have access to the internet to make use of our resources there. Moodle is more for the registered NAMCOL learners. Can be used by accessed by anyone. That is our secondary content. Then for a type of to make, say my internet unstable, I hope it's not. To make content a little bit more interactive by looking at the list shared with us about the 100 best tools. We've bit on WordWall, which is also subscribed. You need to pay for it. Extend and just the embedded. For quizzes, that's the quizzes embedded the quiz feature. Good. And I have already mentioned. Okay. With regard to communication for teaching and learning, we mostly make use of our subscription of Aspectus as a package. We're making use of Teams for teaching, for learners, for as in this, also for any kind, we make use of point feature. WhatsApp is not really a tool, but that we can communicate our developing WhatsApp of access, because don't tend to lose. So we do not really, the only time that we do not really use social media for teaching, but more in terms of sharing information with our learners and with the general NAMCOL public. Then with regard to the web tools, mostly used browsers is Google Chrome, because the most type of phones that are used, which our learners use to connect to internet, is the Android phones, and the Google Chrome is the browser. So we also stick to that browser to, if I show a learner what to do, what my screen look like should look the same as the learner's screen. I think I've mentioned that we are working on creating open educational resources. So normal web browsers that or search tools that we use, we will use Google, but we will use Google Advanced Search. We make use of Creative Commons Search and searching all open educational OER repositories and sites to find for and guide our learners to get, or students to get some information. To some extent, mostly we use Google Translate, although it's not really that much use because English is more like used in Namibia, and the other languages is not yet on the internet, like Oshiwambo and Oshiherero and so on. But Deep Learn we will use for translation of German, from English to German, for German because we offer it as a subject. NAMCOL create or share our videos. We have our YouTube channel, and sometimes when we have live meetings or streaming, we might make use of Facebook or YouTube live streaming. And yes, only with regard to English is not really our mother tongue. So even for our developers and for our learners, I guide all our learners to at least add the Grammarly extension to the Chrome browser to help them, because you can sign up for free and help them with the language when they do assignments as such. And that, colleagues, in brief, is a reference to what my teams are using. Some developers use some tools more than others because it also depends on the developer's choice, but it's the free tools or open source tools that they're using the most. Thank you.
So like we have Google Workspace, which is the mainstay for the entire institution because all our classes run on Google Classroom. And we use this as a tool to share all our resources with the students, to conduct online examinations, to share lectures, to record lectures. In fact, apart from that, students use all those Google Workspace tools online, like the Word variant and the spreadsheet, and even the creating presentations online. They use to connect with classrooms using Google Meet. They also use Zoom a lot because we have a few Apple products that have excellent integration with Zoom. And so, for example, in classes where we have to teach mathematics or solve questions, we use an iPad that can be integrated with Zoom, and that video that is generated out of Zoom is then posted on the Google Workspace for everybody to see. We use a lot of YouTube, and it is, I think so, one of the #1 tools that we have for accessing information. We use the quizzes app because we have our semester examinations conducted through quizzes. So it is a excellent quiz based app. Since being connected with COL, we are using Moodle. This is an excellent platform to generate blended learning programs for our students, and our students we have the whole units planned by our teachers. The resources are being shared, the videos are being recorded, and the whole program is being run on the Moodle platform, which is highly interactive, and the students can also be assessed through this platform. So this is the in thing currently for us at the moment, and for the last 6 months or so, we've been using Moodle very actively. WhatsApp, although being a messaging tool, has a very high value in terms of education because there are many resources, there are files, there are PDF documents, there are videos, there are voice recordings that need to be shared immediately with students. And WhatsApp is an excellent source of communication with students during that time. We use Screencast-O-Matic and Presentation Cube, which is now called Slideator. These tools help us in doing the screen recording and also making presentations for which can be directly uploaded on YouTube as videos, and we don't need to use a separate video editing software. And the picture as well as the presentation, they play synchronously through this Slideator program. And most of these programs, what I'm sharing, except for maybe Moodle and some other learning management systems, are paid subscriptions, but rest all of them, even the basic functionality in Google Workspace is free if you are an educational institution. It's only when you require the storage space for keeping your recordings and sharing them even at a later date than more than 30 days, then you require a paid subscription to Google Workspace. And obviously, like everybody said, they use PowerPoint for creating their presentations. Apart from that, we are using two platforms, which is LinkedIn Learning and Coursera, because for this we have an institutional membership, and there are excellent programs and courses that students can add value to their overall portfolio, and they also get a certificate of achievement, our Coursera and LinkedIn Learning. So these are some of the e-learning tools that we are currently using at the moment. I can give you a quick example of what we do in our Google setup, which is like, for example, we have the classrooms set up for each and every teacher. They have a time of the class, and the classwork can be arranged according to different topics, and each topic has been posted on a particular date, and then each topic would also have the data that the students can see. So for example, if this is a data, the video related with that particular data will also be there. And if you just click on it, you can just see that the sound with the recording of the program is being done, and the teacher is presenting live to the students. So this is how we actually use Google Classroom for all our purposes. In fact, we conduct all our examinations also. So for example, this is an online quiz test. We just give the quiz to the students, and then they turn it within a particular period of time, and they are also evaluated online. So this really gives us that edge in evaluating things in the online space. And in fact, what I would like to say here is that many of the tools that we are using in our institution have really come out of the requirements during the COVID times. Because earlier we were having some of these products, but they were not being used to that extent. but COVID has actually given us the impetus to use these products to their full potential. And we've now started integrating many third-party applications also along with our LMS programs. Like for example, we use a software called Ka-Ming. When students had problems submitting their answer sheets after giving the paper, because many of the students don't use computers here, they use their smartphones. So they used to click pictures of their answer sheets and upload them as PDFs. Now, when our internal assessment is happening, and when we are being assessed by an external agency, they would like to come and see how teachers have checked those papers. So using that Ka-Ming tool, we were able to mark those papers using our fingers as the pen tool. It was kind of more of an invention according to the necessity that we were able to use these apps. But as I said earlier, technology is basically more of in your own context kind of a thing. There are many beautiful tools available in that list that you have sent to us. But these are some of the tools that we really use. Google Workspace is the one that has actually revolutionized our teaching, learning, and assessment process. And Zoom has been great for conducting webinars and for conducting, lectures where you require to use a pen and a web paper. And Quizzes is a platform which we use consistently for taking quizzes. And Moodle is the new platform that we are using for our blended learning or virtual learning environments that we are creating in our institution. And then obviously Coursera, LinkedIn, these are all available for everybody. And obviously these would be better with an institutional subscription because they are slightly on the costlier side, because if you want to have a large number of courses available for students, these would be only available in the paid version of the tool. So I think these are what we use in our context.